Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. On day 2 of the G20 summit in Brazil, leaders discuss sustainable development and clean energy transition. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds bilateral talks with Brazil's President Lula da Silva. India pushes for clean energy by highlighting climate action at COP29 summit in Baku, Azerbaijan. Ukraine hits Russia with US missiles for the first time on the war's 1,000th day. Russian President Vladimir Putin lowers threshold for a nuclear strike. US envoy in Beirut says end to war between Israel and Hezbollah is within our grasp. On day 2 of the 19th G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the focus is on sustainable development and transition to cleaner energy. Meanwhile, on day 1, a joint declaration was adopted addressing a range of issues of global importance. DD India's Mihir Makuri gets us more.
As the world faces unprecedented crises, leaders from the group of 20 major economies are meeting in Brazil to address these challenges and chart a way forward. On day 2 of the G20 summit, focus is on sustainable development and the transition to cleaner energy, aiming to bolster the chances of a successful deal at the United Nations climate talks in Azerbaijan. In a joint statement, G20 leaders reaffirmed their commitment to climate action and emphasized the urgent need for negotiators at COP29 to agree on a new financial goal. This goal will outline the contributions wealthy nations must take to support developing countries in combating climate change. COP29 has welcomed this commitment.
Friends, the G20 has now issued its leaders' communique, and we are grateful for the support they have pledged for the COP29 presidency. We appreciate the signal that they have sent of their intention to accelerate the reform of the international financial architecture. We thank them for their support for a successful NCQG outcome in Baku. We now need to translate political will into practical work.
On the conflict in Ukraine, G20 leaders reached a narrow consensus, focusing on the human suffering and economic fallout of the conflict. The leaders also expressed deep concern about the catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza, calling for increased aid, civilian protection, and a comprehensive ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. The G20 endorsed a proposal to ensure that ultra-high net worth individuals are effectively taxed, a key victory for Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. On day 1 of the G20 summit, President Lula launched a global alliance to combat poverty and hunger backed by 81 countries.
It is up to those who are here. It is up to those around this table, the unavoidable task of ending this scourge that shames humanity. That's why we set as the central objective of the Brazilian presidency in the G20 the launch of a global alliance against hunger and poverty. This will be our greatest legacy.
US President Joe Biden pledged $4 billion to the World Bank's International Development Association to support the world's poorest nations.
I'm proud to announce the United States is pledging $4 billion over the next 3 years to the World Bank's International Development Association.
As the G20 summit continues, the world watches closely. With urgent global challenges at the forefront, from climate change and poverty to conflict and inequality, leaders are faced with the difficult task of turning words into action. Mihir Makuri, reporting for DD India.
And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi held talks with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on the sidelines of the G20 summit. While opening the bilateral meeting, Brazilian president told Prime Minister Modi that they have incorporated several things in their G20 which were inspired from India's presidency. He added that Brazil wanted to reach the level of efficiency in organizing the summit that India had shown last year. Leaders also took stock of the full range of bilateral ties between the two countries, reaffirmed their commitment to improve cooperation in sectors like energy, biofuels, defense, agriculture, and more. For the latest from Rio, joining me is DT India correspondent Gautam Roy. Gautam, a day after the condemnation of wars at G20, Ukraine has used US missiles to hit Russia. Is there a problematic gap between the text and the geopolitical realities as we see?
Well, one could take a perspective on that in the sense that we have seen how the leaders of the G20 in the Rio Declaration have urged for a comprehensive ceasefire, and yet we are seeing an escalatory pattern that has been there for quite some time in this conflict, and not just in this conflict, in the West Asian conflict as well. While there has been always talk of getting some sort of across the table process going to figure out how peace can be attained. So one could say that what is being said by the leaders here is not being reflected on the ground at this stage, but that is the reality of the situation, and one has to deal with it as things develop. Shubhendu.
Right, Gautam, host of issues in focus at the G20 meet in Brazil. As leaders discuss sustainable development, climate change and energy, if you could simplify, how do the developments in Rio impact the outcome of COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan?
Well, we'll have to wait and see if the developments in Rio impact COP29 as well, because that is a separate process, and even the G20 Sherpas, while they were deliberating how to get everybody on the same page on a wide range of issues, including climate change, as far as the Rio Declaration is concerned, they wanted to be careful about not really treading on toes, because the purpose of G20, the core purpose, has been a different one from inception. It's evolved through the years and expanded as well. So a large part of the deliberations is also about the challenge of climate change. But what has to happen in terms of collective action on climate change has to be determined by COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, which has been dealing with it, although it was clearly mentioned in the Rio Declaration that now when you talk about climate finance, which is the biggest challenge which Baku has been dealing with for the last few days, that has to now go from billions to trillions. There's no figure that's been mentioned, no commitment being made, because all that has to come from Baku. And this is just a sense of direction that has been given by the G20 leaders. So one can say that enough has not been done here, but the perspective could also be that at least the leaders in their statement in Rio have moved on from billions to trillions, and that's been put on record. So they recognize the need to do that, and incrementally that might happen, although that still remains a bit of a contentious matter, because the question has now become who all will contribute these billions and trillions, and what should be the ambit of that, because you have a country like ours, India, saying that not only should the developed countries raise their targets, they should, they've given targets as to when they will become carbon neutral or net zero till about 2050, 2040. Some countries have done that, some have done till 2050. India's commitment for net zero is 2070. But India said that we need more carbon space, so you should raise your own targets and create carbon space for developing nations like India.
Right, Gautam, and to that question, I also want to add how the leadership of the United States is set to change. President-elect Trump will take charge in about a couple of months. So the kind of commitments that President Biden and his administrations have made this time over in Brazil, how do they become problematic in a couple of months from now? Because we know President-elect Trump has a different kind of worldview on issues like climate change.
Yes, certainly he does, and he's been very vocal about that as well. He's talking about drill, baby drill. consistently throughout the campaign, and that is one of the things that have always remained a bit of a concern for all those who want to save the environment and pursue sustainable development. Although there are arguments to the reverse as well, that just like Trump wants to deal with the migration issue, his solution might create more problems than solve the problem ultimately. The same could be said about his response to the challenge of climate change as well. And if he not only the factor that there's drill baby drill, the kind of act that was passed by the Biden administration to target inflation is mostly about tackling climate change and building up the aging infrastructure, rather rebuilding the aging infrastructure of the US. If all these steps are reversed, then they might lead to more problems. One has to give viable alternatives if in terms of policy and action, not just start rolling back things without filling the space. There can't be a vacuum there. So the administration of Donald Trump will have to think hard if he wants to even roll back certain things, what will take its place.
Right. And Gautam, if we look at the highlights of day one, Global Alliance on Hunger stands out. Could take us through the action-oriented agenda of this plan, and does it also reflect on India's achievements in the field of poverty alleviation?
Well, India, of course, has put across how Prime Minister Modi did that yesterday in that session which followed the announcement of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. He said that India clearly has a template which has been put in place, and it's been working since 2014, since his government came to power the first time around, which has delivered results. 250 million people have been brought out of poverty in India, and yet the task goes on. It's because poverty is still part and parcel of the elimination of it is part and parcel of the developmental process in India, and that work is ongoing in the sense that when COVID hit, there was a scheme that was launched to give free food grain, give dietary support to people. That was for 810 million people have been benefiting with it even now, even in the post-COVID era. So there's a clear recognition that this is something that needs to be sustained in order to address hunger and poverty, and India has been doing that. Apart from that, India has launched many other schemes. There is universal health insurance now, where the elderly have also been incorporated in the third term of this government, which will again add, because all these issues, they are at the core of hunger and poverty. Conflicts are at the core of hunger and poverty, which is why Prime Minister Modi said that these conflicts need to be addressed, and addressed at speed, because there is a food security issue that has cropped up because of these two conflicts. There is a fertilizer insecurity issue that has cropped up because of these conflicts, and these need to be addressed. He was very clear about that.
And finally, one of the key achievements of India's presidency last year was the focus on the global south, and of course the inclusion of the African Union in the G20. How is that progressive momentum taken forward in Rio?
Well, yes, in terms of how the global voice of the global south has been put across in Rio, there's been a constant mention of that as well by the leaders. President Lula has mentioned it, Prime Minister Modi has mentioned it, and all these issues are from the perspective, solutions are being sought to global issues, be it conflicts of climate change or issues of easier debt issuance, because a lot of these developing countries have been put in this phase where they require a lot of hand-holding financially, and easier debt structures. They've been urging both the IMF and the World Bank and similar institutions to come up with such structures to help these countries. So the voice of Global South has been put across very, very sectorally here as well, even in the Rio Declaration. Shubhendu.
Gautam, many thanks for getting us those updates from Rio. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi set to embark on a historic visit to Guyana from November 19th to 21st. King of Spain visits Chiva in Spain, epicenter of the floods. Surveillance camera capture a wild Siberian tiger.
Welcome to Kumarakom, Kerala, God's own country.
Namaskaram from Telangana, India's youngest state, a rising star.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Let's talk about the developments at the COP29. India's Union Minister Kirti Vardhan Singh highlighted the issues faced by the Global South countries due to climate change as he addressed the COP29 summit in Baku, Azerbaijan. Details in this report.
Addressing the COP29 summit in Azerbaijan's Baku, India's Union Minister of State for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Kirti Vardhan Singh, highlighted the climate action including push for clean energy taken by India.
These have not dampened India's resolve and commitment to take ambitious climate actions. We achieved our 2015 NDC targets on emission intensity reduction and non-fossil based installed electricity generation capacity much earlier than 2030 and have further enhanced our ambitions in these sectors. India's renewable energy capacity has nearly tripled from its 2014 levels, and we are on course to achieve the 500 gigawatt target by 2030.
In his opening remarks at the G20, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted India's strides in sustainable agriculture. He said that the country has developed 2,000 climate-resilient crop varieties. G20 leaders' push for sustainable development and the transition to cleaner energy became the focus of the COP summit.
The G20 has now issued its leaders' communique, and we are grateful for the support they have pledged for the COP29 presidency. We appreciate the signal that they have sent of their intention to accelerate the reform of the international financial architecture. We thank them for their support for a successful NCQG outcome in Baku. We now need to translate political will into practical work.
Rich nations are being urged to significantly raise their pledge of $100 billion a year in financing for poorer countries. But disagreements remain over how much the deal should entail and what types of financing should be included. Armed with a guitar and placards, members of the African Climate Justice Alliance demanded aid for countries battling extreme weather events. Bureau Report, DD India.
Moving on, Guyana hopes to expand its cooperation with India into newer areas such as energy and food security, and in the area of technology and military hardware. In an exclusive interview to DD India's Ramesh Ramachandran, Guyana's President Dr. Mohammad Irfan Ali says he has personally witnessed the transformation of India under leadership of Prime Minister Modi.
Global leadership does not happen by accident. Global leadership occurs when you have strong local leadership in the country itself. And Prime Minister Modi has demonstrated a strength of leadership that has really positioned India globally and has opened up many opportunities for India and a greater level of regard for India. So what I've seen in India is a country that is accelerating at a rapid pace.
President Ali says that he wants Guyana to benefit from India's success in the field of digitization and innovation.
Within the coming weeks, we will launch our Forest Guyana Digital School, which is built off of an Indian platform. We have thousands of students studying online at various Indian universities. So what I would say is that a lot of the technological advancement in improving governance efficiency, improving access to service, expanding access to service that you have mastered, of course, we want to learn and to adopt those technologies here.
And you can watch the full interview of President of Guyana at 9 a.m. India time, that is 3:30 GMT, on Wednesday. And DD India correspondent Siddharth Bharadwaj joins us live from Georgetown, Guyana. Siddharth, good to have you with us. Now, visit to Guyana by an Indian Prime Minister is taking place after half a century. One must wonder what took it so long and why now?
Hi, Shubhendu. Definitely. I mean, indeed, this is a historic state visit by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Guyana, and that too happening after 1968. It took long, but then this visit certainly is very, very significant in a manner that it will certainly strengthen the bilateral ties between both the countries. And this visit is coming at a time when Guyana has positioned itself as a leading oil producer and a key player when it comes to the global oil company, global oil production as well. So certainly it will give a fillip, it will certainly give a boom to the bilateral ties between both the countries. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi, will certainly be meeting the President of Guyana, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, and both the leaders are expected to discuss wide range of topics from defense to infrastructure to energy, perhaps hydrocarbons. Apart from that, education as well. India has assisted Guyana in many programs in many sectors. In fact, education is one of them, defense is one of them, and agriculture is one of them. And also this visit is coming at a time when both the countries, India and Guyana, are moving towards sustainable development and sustainable energy, and this visit will certainly, fulfill each other's energy goals as well. So it's quite a significant visit by Indian Prime Minister. The diaspora here is very, very happy, and they just want to see Indian Prime Minister. The stage is all set, and people here are all set to welcome Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi after so years. The visit, which will certainly, strengthen, like I said, bilateral ties between both the countries, and of course, one of the agendas of this particular visit by Indian Prime Minister is also the second India CARICOM summit. Remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met the CARICOM leaders on the sidelines of the 7th United Nations General Assembly. This time around as well, he will be meeting the CARICOM leaders, and the aim of the summit would be to strengthen India's ties with CARICOM. So all in all, Shubhendu, this visit is very, very significant, very important as well. It will strengthen the relations between both the countries, and also will expand, India's presence in the Caribbean.
Right, host of areas in focus, Siddharth, as you mentioned. If we look at the details, particularly as far as energy cooperation is concerned, we see that theme also being deliberated at G20. What kind of sustainable energy cooperation can we expect between India and Guyana?
Shubhendu, energy remains a key focus, between, as far as this visit is concerned. Energy cooperation remains definitely key focus when this visit is concerned by the Indian Prime Minister. And of course, like I just mentioned, that this visit is coming at a time when Guyana is considered as the leading oil producer. Both the countries are expected to collaborate on hydrocarbons as well, and if this happens, then both the country will mutually benefit from this particular sector in terms of economy as well, with India's expertise in particular sector and Guyana's rich oil and natural gas reserves. This will certainly benefit both the countries as far as economic development is concerned. Apart from the fact that India is also looking this as an opportunity to diversify its energy sources and of course strengthen its energy security as well. If this collaboration happens as far as the hydrocarbons, hydrocarbon sector is concerned, then both the country, then India will certainly diversify its energy sources and will reduce dependence on all the other countries and regions from it currently imports its oil and natural gas.
All right, Siddharth, I'll stop you for a moment. We're getting some important visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's bilateral meeting. Their Prime Minister with host of other leaders at the G20 meet in Brazil. There is the Italian Prime Minister. There's also UN Chief. It's a photo op moment. Also head of the World Bank. Hosts of leaders together with Prime Minister, an important photo op opportunity at the G20 summit in Brazil. Those visuals coming in from Rio de Janeiro. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, host of world leaders from Italy, South Korea, United Nations Secretary General, leaders from World Bank and other institutions, also from WHO. Those visuals coming in live, an important photo opportunity. Prime Minister Narendra Modi engaging with world leaders at the G20 summit in Brazil. Those are visuals that came in just a short while ago. Prime Minister Narendra Modi with leaders from Italy, South Korea, United Nations, World Bank and other global institutions. Those visuals coming in from Rio de Janeiro, where the G20 summit is underway under leadership of Brazil President. And those are the updates coming in from the G20 summit in Brazil. Rio de Janeiro is where the summit is taking place. The visuals, Prime Minister Narendra Modi with world leaders and also heads of various global institutions. Leaders from Italy, South Korea, United Nations, World Bank, World Health Organization, among others. Prime Minister engaging with world leaders on the sidelines of the G20 summit, an important opportunity to engage with leaders of the leading economies, all gathered in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Giorgia Meloni, Italian Premier, meeting the Prime Minister. Those visuals were coming in from Rio de Janeiro, where the G20 summit is underway. Prime Minister is engaging with world leaders on the sidelines. He met leaders across the world yesterday on day one. On day two, as the leaders deliberate on clean energy transition, climate financing, and also issues of sustainable development. In those visuals, Prime Minister engaging with leaders from Italy, Giorgia Meloni, also South Korea. And here we have Prime Minister Narendra Modi engaging with the President of Chile, important partner in South America. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holding bilateral talks. These visuals came in just a short while ago from Rio de Janeiro. Brazil is hosting this edition of the G20. Host of issues related to sustainable development are in focus. Also gives an opportunity for world leaders, leaders of the 2021 biggest economies in the world, to engage with one another on the sidelines. Here in the visuals, Prime Minister Narendra Modi shaking hands and engaging with the Chile President. Rio de Janeiro is hosting this edition of the G20. On the sidelines, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with his delegation, holding bilateral talks with Chile President. Those visuals coming in from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, hosting the G20 Summit 2024. Important opportunity for bilateral engagements. Prime Minister of India alongside the President of Chile. The leaders at the G20 have made important headway as far as commitments to sustainable development is concerned, poverty alleviation, tackling global hunger. And here the leaders are also getting an opportunity to engage at a bilateral level. Chile President and Indian Prime Minister holding talks. Chile, an important partner in South America for India, host of areas in focus, from economy to capacity building. Prime Minister of India alongside Chile President in Rio de Janeiro on the sidelines of the G20 summit that is underway. This is day 2 of the G20. In those visuals, Indian Prime Minister holding bilateral talks with the Chile President. And world leaders convened on the margins of the G20 Leaders Summit in Rio. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, head of states of Singapore, Portugal, Norway, Spain, Mexico, along with WHO, UN, World Bank, IMF and WTO took part in the session. The leaders emphasized the power of digital public infrastructure, AI and data-driven governance in achieving sustainable development goals and transforming lives of people globally. Let's now look at other stories making news around the world. King of Spain Felipe VI, Queen Letizia begin a highly anticipated trip to epicenter of Spain's deadliest floods in decades. Crowds in the devastated town of Chiva in the eastern Valencia region applaud and shout, "Long live the King," 3 weeks after October 29 disaster that claimed over 200 lives. A surveillance video captured the moment of a wild Siberian tiger who rammed itself into a large iron gate, narrowly missing a farmer in North China's Heilongjiang province. The video from Monday shows the man stepping out onto the street to check on the tiger's whereabouts. Upon spotting the tiger, he hurries back to close the gate, which the enormous cat hurled itself against. And still to come on DD India News Hour. On the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar meets his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. On day 2 of the G20 summit in Brazil, leaders discuss sustainable development and clean energy transition. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds bilateral talks with Brazil's President Lula da Silva. India pushes for clean energy by highlighting climate action at COP29 summit in Baku, Azerbaijan. Ukraine hits Russia with US missiles for the first time on war's 1,000th day. Russian President Putin lowers the threshold for a nuclear strike. US envoy in Beirut says end to war between Israel and Hezbollah is within our grasp. On the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. The two leaders reviewed progress in bilateral relations, particularly focusing on border issues. Here's more.
On the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. The leaders noted the progress in the recent disengagement in the India-China border areas. In a post on X, Dr. Jaishankar said, "We noted the progress in the recent disengagement in the India-China border areas and exchanged views on the next steps in our bilateral ties. Also discussed the global situation." The ministers recognized that the disengagement in the border areas had contributed to the maintenance of peace and tranquility. The discussions focused on the next steps in India-China relations. It was agreed that a meeting of the special representatives and of the Foreign Secretary Vice Minister mechanism will take place soon. Among the steps discussed were the resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra pilgrimage, data sharing on trans-border rivers, direct flights between India and China, and media exchanges. On the global situation and international issues, Dr. Jaishankar noted that India and China have both differences and convergences. Dr. Jaishankar highlighted constructive cooperation between India and China in BRICS, SCO and G20. He emphasized commitment to a multipolar world, including a multipolar Asia. Dr. Jaishankar added that India does not view its relationships through the prism of other nations. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi agreed with Dr. Jaishankar and noted that the leaders had agreed in Kazan on the way forward. The two ministers felt that it was imperative that the focus should be on stabilizing ties, managing differences and taking the next steps. This meeting adds to a series of high-level interactions between the two nations' foreign ministers. Both leaders last met in Lao PDR on 25th July this year during the ASEAN-related foreign ministers' meetings. On 4th July, they held talks in Astana during a regional gathering. Last year, on 14th July, discussions took place between the two leaders on the sidelines of the ASEAN Regional Forum in Jakarta. In 2022, the two met during the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in Bali on 7th July. In the same year, the leaders also met on 25th March when Wang Yi visited India and held direct discussions. On 14th July 2021, a meeting was held between the two leaders during the SCO Foreign Ministers meeting in Dushanbe. They also met on 10 September 2020 during the SCO Foreign Ministers meeting in Moscow. And on 17th June in the same year, the leaders spoke over the phone regarding developments in Ladakh. The latest meeting in Rio underscores continuing diplomatic efforts between India and China, as both nations navigate border issues, broader bilateral ties and global tensions. Bureau Report, DD India.
The United States is optimistic that the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel will come to an end soon as its envoy hold talks with Lebanese leader in Beirut. Details in our next report.
Diplomacy has taken the center stage as efforts to diffuse tensions in West Asia make progress. US envoy Amos Hochstein, who is currently in Beirut, has said that he held very constructive talks with the Speaker of Lebanon's parliament and that there was a real opportunity to bring the conflict between the Iran-backed Hezbollah and Israel to an end.
This is a moment of decision-making. I'm here in Beirut to facilitate that decision, but it's ultimately the decision of the parties to reach a conclusion to this conflict. It is now within our grasp.
The meeting comes after the Lebanese government and Hezbollah agreed to a US-drafted ceasefire proposal. According to a Lebanese official, Lebanon's remarks on the proposal were in line with the UNSC Resolution 1701, which ended the 2006 conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. The resolution, whose terms require Hezbollah to have no armed presence in the area between the Lebanese-Israeli border and the Litani River, is yet to be fully implemented. The diplomatic efforts have not led to halt in attacks. Several people were injured as 40 rockets fired from Lebanon hit central and northern Israel. Buildings were damaged in Israeli strikes on central Beirut. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Washington had reservations about Israel entering Gaza to dismantle Hamas infrastructure post the October 7th attack.
To accomplish these goals, we entered Gaza. I must tell you, members of the Knesset, that the United States objected, made reservations, also expressed objection. I did not threaten, it did not apply sanctions, not at that time. It expressed reservations and suggested we not enter Gaza. It said that it could be dealt with from the air. It sent experts and we decided to follow our view and we go in with ground forces.
Earlier, UNSC members called for a rise in humanitarian aid to Gaza. Bureau Report, DD India.
As the Russia-Ukraine conflict reaches its 1000th day, it has reshaped geopolitics, devastated millions of people. In these 1000 days of Russia-Ukraine conflict, we take you to the highlights and what is happening at the moment.
On 24th of February 2022, the world watched as Russian forces launched a special military operation in Ukraine. While Ukraine and its allies labelled it an unprovoked act of war. The ongoing conflict between Russia-Ukraine marks its 1000th day. So far, infantry operations have taken center stage, highlighting their indispensable nature. From hand-to-hand combat in urban zones like Donetsk to larger merchandised assaults in Kursk, both sides are vying for supremacy. Even foreign involvement highlights this importance. As Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, the number of North Korean troops stationed inside Russia could grow to 100,000.
Putin has brought 11,000 North Korean troops to Ukraine's borders. This contingent may grow to 100,000. While some European leaders think about some elections or something like this at Ukraine's expense, Putin is focused on winning this war. He will not stop on his own.
Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a treaty into law this month on strategic partnership with North Korea, which includes a mutual defense provision. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte stressed that Ukraine will need more aid and more money in order to prevail over Russia as he arrived for a foreign affairs and defense meeting with members of the European Union in Brussels.
Today marks 1,000 days of the full Russian onslaught, the unprovoked full Russian onslaught on Ukraine. So today we'll discuss how we can help Ukraine to prevail. That means more aid, more money, and we have to make available to them, particularly now that the North Koreans have come on board.
After Biden's key approval, Ukraine reportedly launched an attack on Russia's Bryansk region overnight using 6 US-made long-range missiles. The report stated that Russian air defense systems intercepted 5 of the missiles and damaged 1. According to the ministry, the attack resulted in no casualties or damage. Amidst the ongoing military action, 12 people, including a child, were killed in a Russian drone attack on Ukraine's northeast Sumy region. In another incident, Russia's Ministry of Defense stated that its forces had taken control of the village of Novoletsyivka in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region. As the conflict stretches into its 1000th day, it has evolved beyond territorial disputes and political differences. It has become a testament to endurance, hope, and the will to rebuild. These visuals serve as a tribute to those who have lost so much yet to continue to hold on to something even greater, the strength to survive and the courage to believe in a better future. Rahul Upadhyay's report for DD India.
And the conflict rages on. Moving on, Dr. V. Anantha Nageshwaran, India's chief economic advisor, today said that if India wants to sustain a growth rate of 6.5-0.7%, having affordable energy prices is very important, and Trump presidency in the US might actually make a big difference in this regard. He added, strong exports and affordability and availability of energy is important to have a strong economic growth. He was addressing the 11th SBI Banking and Economic Conclave in Mumbai on day 2.
The next 4 years might be very important from the Indian standpoint in terms of keeping energy prices affordable, and that's very, very critical. If we have to sustain the growth rates of between 6.5% and 7%, having affordable energy prices is very important, and the Trump presidency might actually make a big difference in that regard, and probably going forward as well. So one of the very important pillars of being able to sustain high growth is energy affordability and availability.
Sagar Manthan, South Asia's largest maritime thought leadership forum, concluded in New Delhi. The maiden edition of Sagar Manthan, the Great Oceans Dialogue, aims to foster knowledge on maritime sector, provide a premier global platform for global leaders and policy makers to share and shape actionable insights towards effective decisions for a future-ready, sustainable and efficient maritime sector. As India's role as an important and key maritime player has increased manifold, the platform offers a premier platform for everyone to set course for maritime sector's collective journey onwards.
To achieve the blue economy, how green transport will be met a reality by developing green port, green shipping, etc., etc. I believe this is what the Great Ocean Dialogue Sagar Manthan have contributed, and I believe it would be great helpful to each others. All the maritime nation will be benefited out of this event, and they will work as a family to have a holistic working relationship within the nation.
Framework of the ocean economy that serves India's interests as it moves from $4 trillion to $10 trillion, which places India at the high table of the big transitions underway, whether they are the green transitions, whether they are sustainability focused transitions, whether they are transitions to try and demonopolize the sector, which is currently seeing in many ways one or two actors dominating it.
Let's now turn to other stories making news today. Confederation of Indian Industry on Tuesday awarded women for their excellent work in the field of science. Chief Scientific Advisor Professor Ajay Sood and Niti Aayog member Dr. V.K. Saraswat expressed their views regarding the role of women in science, technical engineering and mathematics. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh addressed the Air Force Commanders Conference at Air Force Headquarters in the national capital on Tuesday. Minister commended the force for its dedication and professionalism in safeguarding the nation's sovereignty. He expressed confidence in the Air Force's capability and capacity building, more efficient and effective in keeping with national aims and aspirations. Indian Army launched an initiative, Shiksha at Your Doorstep, to provide basic and primary education to children of Bakarwal tribe in Jammu and Kashmir's Akhnur on Tuesday. It is an open school where children are provided education by going to areas of the tribe. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Goa all set for 55th edition of the International Film Festival of India, IFFI.
G20 meeting taking place in Rio on the 18th and 19th of this month. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be participating here as well, along with the leaders of the world's 20 largest economies who will be deliberating on key issues such as eliminating hunger and poverty, sustainable development. For all the latest on the 2024 G20 summit in Rio, join me, Gautam Roy, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. The 55th edition of International Film Festival of India, IFFI, is set to begin on Wednesday in Goa with 180 international films from 81 countries to be screened till November 28th. Preparations are in full swing as the festival will witness the presence of renowned personalities from the world of cinema. Here's a report on what to look forward to in this festival.
Camera, IFFI. The stage is all set for the 55th edition of the International Film Festival of India in the heart of Goa, and preparations are in full swing for the mega event. This year's program features films across 16 curated segments, ensuring there's something for everyone. From heartwarming dramas to intense documentaries, every corner of cinema is represented. Films making their national and international premieres at IFFI add to the excitement, allowing audiences a sneak peek at the groundbreaking stories. Apart from that, country of focus is Australia. Speaking on its importance, Ms. Vrunda Desai, Joint Secretary Films, said that this not only strengthens bilateral relationship between the two countries, but also open doors to global film market.
This year Australia is the country of focus, and we have the opening film from Australia, as well as there is a roundtable conference between the producers, the Indian filmmakers and Australian filmmakers.
For the first time ever, an OTT platform of Prasar Bharati will also be released on the opening ceremony at IFFI. The Prasar Bharati OTT booth will provide festival goers with an opportunity to explore the expanding world of OTT. From culture to cuisine, IFFI is going to be a delight for sign lovers. And it also provides an opportunity to own the skills of young volunteers.
I'm very excited, like we are getting to learn something new which will be helpful for our career as we are students of hospitality.
The festival, which is spread across 9 days, kickstarts on the 20th of November and will go on till the 28th of it in Goa.
From showcasing young minds to having a particular space for women filmmakers, from the first online portal to having the first OTT platform, and also from honoring the legends of Indian cinema to having the first ever IFFI, IFFI 2024 is celebrating cinema at its best. So don't forget to tune in and follow IFFI with DD India from the 20th till the 28th of November. With camera person Alok, this is Deepika reporting for DD India from Goa.
And from IFFI, let's now talk about sports. The Special Olympics Asia Pacific Bocce and Bowling competition kicked off with a grand opening ceremony at the Tyagaraja Sports Complex in New Delhi. Vice President of India, Jagdeep Dhankar, inaugurated the event, praised the dedication of the special athletes. The event also saw Union Sports Minister Mansukh Mandavia and President of Special Olympics Bharat Dr. Malika Nadda in attendance.
The opening ceremony of the Special Olympics Asia Pacific Bocce and Bowling competition was held at the Tyagaraja Sports Complex in New Delhi. Vice President of India Jagdeep Dhankar graced the ceremony as the chief guest and declared the games open. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar expressed his admiration for the athletes and everyone supporting the event.
By way of these games, we are celebrating something very important, and that is inclusion and dignity. Under the visionary Prime Minister of Narendra Modi, several affirmative steps have been taken to provide an ecosystem to them, to unleash their energy and potential, to realize their hopes and aspirations, to realize their dreams. And I've seen this myself while greeting the parading athletes.
The opening ceremony witnessed a grand display of cultural performances and a special march past by the participating countries. Union Sports Minister Mansukh Mandavia, along with the President of Special Olympics Bharat Dr. Malika Nadda, also attended the event. On this occasion, Mansukh Mandavia said that the government is fully committed to supporting the Special Olympics movement.
Today, I am pleased to announce that the government, under the dynamic leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
And we now turn to some shots coming in from Rio de Janeiro. Leadership of Argentina and India holding bilateral talks. Those are visuals coming in from Rio de Janeiro. Brazil is hosting the G20 summit this year. On the sidelines, leaders have an opportunity to hold bilateral talks. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the leadership of Argentina holding a bilateral talk. Argentinian Prime Minister and Indian Prime Minister holding bilateral talks on the sidelines of the G20 summit. There's a correction. It's an Argentinian President, Javier Milei, holding talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. An opportunity for the leaders to hold bilateral talks. On the sidelines of the G20 summit, Javier Milei, President of the Republic of Argentina, holding talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India. Those visuals came in a short while ago from Rio de Janeiro. Indian Prime Minister and Argentinian President holding talks. Javier Milei of Argentina held bilateral talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India. Those visuals came in from Rio de Janeiro, that is playing host to the G20 summit this year in Brazil. On the sidelines, a number of important bilateral meetings are also taking place. Those visuals came in a short while ago. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets Argentinian President Javier Milei in Rio de Janeiro. Delegation level talks takes place between the both leaders. Argentina, an important partner for India in the continent, in South America. Those visuals of the delegation level meeting, bilateral talks that took place between Argentinian President Javier Milei and Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India. Those are visuals of the bilateral meeting between the leaders of India and Argentina. Prime Minister Modi meeting the President of Argentina, Javier Milei. That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.
तुझे तगड़ा इंसेंटिव मिला है। क्या प्लान है?
सोच रहा हूँ गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज में इन्वेस्ट करूं।
बिल्कुल सही सोच रहे हैं आप। अब गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज में इन्वेस्ट करना आसान हो गया है।
पर कैसे?
आरबीआई रिटेल डायरेक्ट स्कीम में बिना ब्रोकर के आप इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं और आपको आपकी पूंजी पर मिलेगी रिटर्न्स। आरबीआई पोर्टल पर जाइए, मुफ्त में अकाउंट खोलिए और अपने बैंक खाते से सीधे पैसे इन्वेस्ट कीजिए। सुरक्षित, आसान।
रिटायरमेंट के बाद मैं भी यही इन्वेस्ट करूँ।
बहुत सही कह रहे हैं आप। आरबीआई कहता है
जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए।